All right, here we go. Back with another edition of the Gill Athletics Track and Field Connections Podcast, bringing you coaches from around the country, around the world sometimes, and striving to hit every level of track and field. So from summer club coaches to NCAA, NAIA, we love you all. If you have coach in your name, it doesn't matter what level. That is very irrelevant to us. I'm so proud to be your host, Mike Cunningham, National Business Development Manager, and really, I'm just a podcast host. That's what they pay me for. Isn't that the greatest thing in the world? I got the greatest life in the world. So without further ado, help me welcome today's guest. We've got from Harlingen High School down in the great state of Texas. It's a little hot down there, which we're going to learn. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Mr. Hickel Woolery. How are you doing today?
Doing good, sir. Doing good.
So I asked you earlier about you're in Harlingen and how hot it must be, because you're even farther south than I was just in Austin. You're even farther south than that.
Yes, further south than Austin, further south than San Antonio.
Oh man,
south.
So you're burning up. It's like 100 and
it's hot. 102 right now, 103. Feels like 110, 114 sometimes. So it's hot. It's hot.
Yeah. Oh man, you know what? I would rather have that than the cold, though. I'm not a
likewise.
Yeah.
I'm from Jamaica, so tropical type stuff. I like the heat more than the cold. So yeah, I'll go with this than the cold any day.
I'll complain about how hot it is and humidity and sun way more. I'm cool with that way more than I'm freezing. I can't feel my fingers, my nose, etc. That's a huge turnoff for me, man. I'm not a fan. I always tell people when it gets, I'm in Illinois, when it gets cold, December through, February and even March, I really travel a lot. I'm like, hey, boss man, Hickel down in Harlingen needs to see me on a big order. I got to go visit him. Well, Coach, what we do here is we explore to uplift and honor your journey. So for you, where does coaching begin for you? And what I mean by that is, assuming you were an athlete, somewhere it had to change from the idea that coaching was something that was done to you, go run this, go lift that, etc. And maybe somewhere it unlocked for you and was like, wait a minute, like maybe I could be a coach one day. Where does that journey start for you?
Well, it started really back home in Jamaica. I've been doing track for a very long time. I think since I was like 10. I mean, I've been doing track for forever. Our high school system is somewhat different from here. We start high school at the 7th grade level. So 7th grade to 12th grade is our high school. So we start high school early. In high school, I did both soccer and track. My two sports were soccer and track, and then it became just track event down the road. But in high school, while I was doing track, I became the captain. So you got that responsibility of you're taking care of the kids as well. My coach would give me responsibilities like, okay, you are handling the throws today or the sprinters or whatever you're doing. So that kind of that responsibility became something that taught me how to really work with others, And from there, it kind of developed into literally being a student of the sport, So I learned a lot through that. And I was a multi-athlete in high school. I did the heptathlon.
Really?
Yes. In high school, I was a heptathlete in high school, and I also was a shot put discus guy, specialty as well.
Yeah.
So that's why I got recruited to come to America. I got recruited to go to A&M Corpus Christi.
Oh yeah.
Scholarship. So that's what I recruited to be a heptathlete, to be a deck athlete.
Yeah. I had a few events.
So a deck athlete in college, but we didn't have the facility. We didn't have pole vault when I first came here at A&M Corpus Christi. So when we finished indoor, Coach Flanagan was like, hey, you want to just focus on throws or focus on the events that we do have, because we don't have pole vault. So we can't really just throw into the deck without learning pole vault. So that's kind of how I became strictly throwing in college. But the sprinting, jumping, all that stuff was part of my background as well.
Well, yeah, stay there in high school. I'm always fascinated. I grew up in the state of Alabama, and how we did things there is different than when I first started coaching high school in Chicago, and certainly it's different than California, Texas. We have a lot of different culture as it relates to track in just our 50 states here. I'm always fascinated with another country and a country I've never been to. I think my bias says, oh, when you said you're from Jamaica, I'm like, oh, he must have been a sprinter because of Usain. And
Yeah,
yeah, I saw you roll your eyes like, well,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, pretty much. You know what I mean? Because when I started off with everything pretty much. You know, I was doing jumps. We have competition against the jump guys. I have competition against the sprinters. I was on relay teams. But I also threw too. So I was literally a multi-athlete encompassing everything, you know.
Right.
And under the cap of Usain Bolt, really, we're the same age. You know, we have similar friends we know.
Right.
He was competing the same time I was competing. So we'd have track meets together and stuff like that. So it's literally that realm of athletes that, I mean, even right now, really. I was on a junior team with Shelley and Fraser Price. Johan Blake, I was on a junior team with him as well. So it's very small country, man. If you've done track back then you're pretty much a part of that group, you know?
Right. So I'm curious, and we'll get to your current status here in a second as a high school coach here in Texas in America, but kind of knowing that you know both now, you know, you've coached high school here in America and you went through the high school system there in Jamaica. What are some of the differences in regards to, see, you know, if you're watching us on YouTube, you saw his face, there must be some mega differences here. Yeah. What's the difference in like culture for our sport down in Jamaica?
I think the work ethic is a bit different. Training wise is a bit different as well. I think we train much harder back home. The work ethic is a big part of it. Like, it's real competition. Like, you can't slack, you know. Here sometimes you struggle to get some kids to join your team. Back home you get a few kids, everybody have to perform because you have another bunch of kids who are equally as fast, if not faster, and they want to run, you know. I think that's the thing. Kids want to run back home. Here it's almost like a punishment, you know, almost. I don't want to run because there's punishment. And so sometimes you have kids who are talented who do not even do track. Another thing is we have a lot more sports here where kids can go and join, you know. You have a lot of kids who want to play football. I mean, you have some kids who are actually track kids, but they want to play football. Yeah, you have kids.
It's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, you have kids who actually track kids, but they want to do basketball, you know. So you have so many sports here that kids can get involved in. Sometimes their main sport is not really their main sport because they probably love basketball more, they love football more, but that's not really what's for them, you know. So I think selection-wise, we don't have as much choice of sports back home. You know, we have football and everything else. We have a few sports, but track is one of the biggest sports now because, I mean, Usain Bolt has made that bigger than life itself. So I think more kids are getting involved in track. But the system here is just, you don't have enough kids, I think, who are trying to do track. It's almost like a secondary thing. I'm not going to go to track. And even though a lot of kids here have the talent, who could be really fast, but they're in other sports too, you know? So I think that's the biggest difference, you know, finding that talent pool of kids who want to do track willingly.
What about the coaching side of it? You know, you've met plenty of American high school and college coaches, and obviously you had your own high school coaches, and maybe you met some of the other high schools and college coaches there in Jamaica. Is there a difference in how they approach the profession of coach, like how they approach coaching kids, or is that kind of maybe universal?
To some extent, I would say high school kids who are coached in track back home, those coaches are predominantly track coaches. I think they're more specialized in track. I think here you have coaches who are, I'm not knocking anybody, but you have a football coach who's a track coach, you know, but he doesn't know as much about track as football, but he's predominantly a football coach who is coaching track or other sports, you know. So it's not as specialized as I would say Jamaica, because Jamaica, yeah, your track coach usually is coaching track all year, you know. Here you have coaches who are jumping from different sport and going to track later on. So that's a big difference, which, I mean, that it also shows level of knowledge as well, because the kids are getting that level of knowledge. And I've always thought of athletes who have probably been from other schools, and I hear what they're doing. I'm like, okay, you know. So I think that the professional pool of track coaches is not as big, I would say, as Jamaica, because those track coaches back home, they're really track coaches, you know.
Yeah, and again, this is where it's so interesting because even inside of America, we have different pockets and
Yeah.
culture. You know, where I grew up in Alabama, very similar to almost exactly to what you said. You know, I played football. Our football coaching staff was every other sport
Mm.
coach. So, you know, our
Yeah.
basketball coach was the DB
Yeah.
coach. Our tennis coach was offensive line coach. Our track coach was the quarterback coach, etc. And I remember I moved from Alabama to Chicago, and I called a local high school to see if they needed a volunteer, just someone to come help a couple of days, you know, while I was in college and such. And so I'm talking to the track coach, and Russ Martin. I'll never forget him. And I asked him, I was like, Coach, so what position do you coach in football? And you know, he was like dismayed. He didn't understand the question. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, like you obviously coach foot. Like everybody
Yeah.
coaches
Yeah.
football,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, when you're in high school. And he was like, and he laughed because you know I hadn't met him at the point, you know, at that point. But when I finally did, I kind of, you know, he was the prototypical distance guy. You know, he's
Mhm.
6'2", skinny. You know, it's like what am I going to do in football? Is what he was
Mhm.
kind of thinking. But he was just laughing. He's like, no, Mike. He goes, I just coach cross country and track, and that blew my mind. I thought, you know, what my experience was in Alabama. Well, that was what it was everywhere in my mind. And so to actually learn that there are some places
Some
where
places, yeah.
the track coaches are the track coaches, basketball is basketball, etc. I still remember just being floored, like, oh, that this bizarro world for me. It was really crazy. Another aspect that's kind of interesting for you, and I hear this more internationally. We had a really good 5,000 meter runner when I was at Troy University from England. And he mentioned growing up in like a club system over there and how when he first started track, he did triple jump and shot put. And here in America, big swath stereotype here because it's not like this everywhere. But here we tend to pigeonhole people. Like first time you come out for track, you are a sprinter or you are a thrower or you know you go one way and you don't look at the throwers, you're a jumper, you stay over here. But I hear more internationally where you kind of get a taste of a
Yeah.
lot of different events. And you mentioned that in your story. Is that normal in Jamaica or were
Yeah.
you
It's
okay?
because I think most throwers want to go race the sprinters. But
Mm,
if you're a thrower or you're a field events person, you think you're fast. So you want to go run against a sprinter sometime or just for fun. If
yeah,
it might be just for fun, you're like, nah, that guy's pretty fast for a thrower. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Let's see what he can do doing something else. So sometimes it becomes like a game or a fun thing to do, and then you can see other kids doing other things. I always have my sprinting friends. They always want to come throw shot put or they
yeah,
want to go jump off against somebody. So it's like that, I guess, in the beginning where we're really exploring. We're exploring different
right,
things and trying to do different things. You might not be fast, but you're still trying to run against somebody who's fast.
right.
But you might have a spotlight on you, like, man, that kid is pretty fast. So that's kind of like how it works, you know. You're not restricted in the sense of you're just a thrower back home. I think even throwers, coaches are open to them doing some sprint work, you know, just to see how they look.
Does that mean somewhere there's a picture of Usain Bolt high jumping or throwing the
It probably
discus?
could be. I heard he was a pretty good long jumper.
Is that right? Well, I would
Yeah,
hope. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I heard he's a pretty good long jumper. So I mean, you never know. But
Yeah.
he probably and he's a fun guy at practices too. So I'm sure he probably tried other things. He probably was good at it and just didn't do it, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Right, right, right. Do you think, you know, so you came over to the States as a multi recruit and then went to focus, and we're going to talk about that, went focused on the throws. Do you think, though, that all those other things helped you to become a better thrower when you were high jumping and sprinting and maybe hurdling? Like, did that athleticism help you, or would you have been better served to just have gone from seventh grade on, become did a thrower things only?
I think that definitely helped me overall being a dynamic athlete. I think great athletes are dynamic. You're not boxing a shell. Most great, even sprinters, they probably could do long jump. You know, they probably can do one or two other events. Even in the sprint realm itself, you might have a good 1-2 guy who could actually do a 400, could do a long jump, you know? So even could do a hurdle. Some guys pretty good at a hurdle who are sprinters. So I think a great athlete is a very dynamic athlete. They're not stuck in just 100s, you know, they're stuck in being able to branch out and do other things. And you've noticed some of the big stars like Fred Curley, Sherika Jackson, they've done other events, you know, they just determine which event they want to really would do. But I think that makes you a better athlete. A dynamic athlete is always a great athlete. I always tell that to my athletes, like a dynamic athlete is a great athlete to have. So it definitely helped me overall becoming a better thorough instead of balance, coordination. I mean, speed. It definitely helped a lot. So yeah.
So when you were looking at coming over to college here in the States, what did you come into? What did you go to school for, at least originally? Did you think you were going to become a teacher? Did you want to become an engineer? What was your first?
My original, my dream job, I guess, is physical therapy.
Okay.
That's really my dream job, you know. So when I came, my degree is biomedical sciences, my bachelor's biomedical sciences, I'm minor in economics. So that's my degree plan. So I never thought about becoming a teacher. You know, I think the opportunity just presented itself. When I finished college, I actually went back to coach college. So I coached A&M Corpus for 2 years.
Okay.
Coached it for 2 years, and then the opportunity came to teach in high school. I'm like, okay, I might do jump on that. It pays a little bit better at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And I had a kid, and I'm like, okay, I definitely need to branch out a bit more. So that's how the opportunity came along. So
yeah, we'll definitely dive into that because I love exploring college, not versus high school coaching, but like I like to bust myths. And there's a big myth out there that for college you can't hire a high school coach. They just can't coach college. It's the craziest thing in the world because
I coach both. So
yeah, exactly. And what we found, is we've had 200 plus coaches here on the Gill podcast. A lot of coaches, college coaches, started as high school coaches. So I don't understand how it can be a myth that high school coaches can't coach college when a lot of our college coaches started out as high school coaches. I just don't understand it. So we'll explore that here in a little bit. Tell me about your college career. You mentioned Sean Flanagan. I've known him for a long time, man. How did you end up picking Corpus Christi, and then how did as you started transitioning from multi to throws, how'd that go for you?
Well, the way it started, Coach Dougherty was the coach at Harlingen at the time. Sean was the distance coach, and the sprints coach was Coach Dougherty. He was a well-known Jamaican track coach by the time, and he eventually started coaching at A&M Corpus Christi. So he recruited me because the high school that I went, he used to be the coach there way back in the day. So when he's recruiting Jamaica, he had that connection. So that's how that came along. That connection came along, and that's how I ended up in Corpus Christi. So that's how that started. The transition itself, being there was very different. Obviously, college is very different. You have indoor, outdoor, long season. If you compete internationally, that's also more competition later on. So it's very, very different in that aspect. But that's why I end up going to Corpus Christi.
You mentioned, and you said obviously it's different, but it may not be obvious to all of us. What is different? I'm going to assume we don't have indoor track in Jamaica High School.
No, we don't have indoor track back home.
But do you have an extent? Again, I've never been, so I just know the weather is at least favorable. Do you have a longer outdoor season? Like, do you start in January for outdoor season, or do you do more?
We start a little earlier. I think we start probably mid-January.
Okay.
Mid-January, probably.
And you're having meets in January, February?
Yeah. Yes, okay. we have a little earlier January season, probably. That's the only thing that might be different. But we probably have more meets, maybe. We have meets every weekend usually. But that's the biggest difference. We don't have indoor back home at all.
Right.
So I mean, that's a big difference to transition into indoor season. Yeah.
And is the big, in our states, and you know it better than anybody being in Texas, for high school, our big goal is to make it to the state meet, right? Like it's so hard, it's hard for any state. Texas is no exception. It's extremely hard to make it to the state meet. In Jamaica, you have the boys and girls championship, right?
The boys and girls championship is the holy grail. I just had the conversation with all my friends who coaching at the university level. I was like, there's nothing like it, and I told them they need to go and recruit in Jamaica, go to boys and girls champs, because that atmosphere I don't think you can duplicate that anywhere really. I mean, even go to the Olympic level, I think that would be something closer to what boys and girls champs is. It's that epic. It's that epic, man. It's an epic place. And most high school kids, I think, who get recruited to come to school in America, they realize real fast that they won't experience that experience again. Like you won't even be nervous. You won't even be nervous at most meets because the level of the atmosphere is just so different. The atmosphere is like nothing you can describe, man. There's nothing you can describe.
That's interesting.
It's
we had Carol Lawrence, head coach of Johnson C. Smith, who is from Jamaica as well. And we were talking about this, and it's a bucket list of mine to go to that meet because I've seen video. I mean, I've seen video of like people climbing into the do whatever it takes to get into the stadium. And I never thought you said something really interesting there, that the kids that come from Jamaica that went to the Boys and Girls Championship and experienced this just carnival. I mean, this fanaticism for the sport will come to the States, and I can't think of another single meet in the States where, from the videos that I've seen, where it's like that. Nothing but that. To be, I don't want to say a letdown, but maybe it's a letdown.
Yeah, maybe it's a letdown. But the experience won't be close. I mean, I think Texas Relay and Penn Relays are two of those big meets where the crowd is definitely a big crowd for those two big, but even then, it won't be.
What about the Texas high school meet? That's a pretty, and I've been to that one. I know no one's climbing into the stadium there.
Yeah, Texas State meet is pretty big, but even then, again, the crowd energy is not like the energy, it's not even close. The energy is just, I don't know how to describe the energy, man. The energy is amazing. It's amazing. I've been to those meets. I've been to all those. I've been to Penn Relays. I've been to Texas Relays. I've been to the state meet many years. And I've seen the crowd energy. The energy is not close. Not even close. The Boys and Girls Champs back home.
I haven't been to the Penn Relays in 15 years, and I went this year. And it was fun. I called my wife in the middle of, the 85th heat of the 4x4. And she's like, "How are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm sitting in the rain, the 85th heat of the 4x4." And she's like, "85th?" I'm like, like 20 more to go. Oh, and by the way, it's just boys. Girls are tomorrow. There's another 100. But I remember watching through the 4 days that I was there, because the last time I'd been there was when I was coaching at Mississippi State. So I was coaching, so I didn't really pay attention to the crowd. I was focused on my athletes. This time I got to sit back and kind of pay attention to the Jamaica and the culture they and I remember there were everybody's in the, not everybody, but Jamaican supporters are in their green and yellow, and they've got their flags and it was fantastic. And to your point, the enthusiasm was off the charts on that 85th. I mean, these kids are running, for the boys, 4:30 for the 4x4. So nothing, we're not breaking any records here. But if a team got close, if a leg got close to catching someone else, it didn't matter if that kid was running 60 seconds, 50 seconds, 40 seconds. The crowd was woo, woo. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
Exactly.
I experience it in a different way. It's like this is what track should be. Like this is fun.
Exactly. And that's like a microcosm of what Boys and Girls Champs is. It gives you an idea, like, if this is what it is over there, what is it like? It's crazy. I think even the Usain Bolts and the Shelley and Fraser Price, they can attest to that. Like when they were at Boys and Girls Champs, the environment is just, that's why they still go even now. If you look in the crowd, you'll see Usain Bolt there at Boys and Girls Champs. Most years he's there. Shelley and Fraser Price. I mean, most past athletes usually go back if they're in Jamaica. So that energy is just unheard of, man.
Are they doing that? The sprints in Jamaica gets the most press for a lot of the people you just mentioned. But we've had some amazing throwers from Jamaica.
Oh man,
our throwers have been really good. Does that same enthusiasm carry over to the other events as well, or is it's it's a regular track meet, but then the 100 shows up, and that's when we're going to go crazy?
I think Jamaicans know, because they are also fans. So they know if kids are doing well and we know early. Say, for example, we have some good throwers right now. We've had these throwers for a while. But Jamaica, no. So when you go and watch, you'll see discus going far or javelin going, like, wow, they give them support as well, you know.
Mhm.
Yes, the sprint is the highlight usually.
Sure.
But other events also get some notoriety as well, you know. I think throws have definitely grown tremendously in Jamaica over the years. We've had some very good coaches over there who have definitely expanded the program. So most events we're getting better at quite a few events. Our jumps are getting crazy right now. Definitely doing really well right now.
The freshman from Arkansas, he's
Hibbert,
from,
Hibbert is doing,
oh
yes,
man,
he's amazing, man. He's amazing.
I mean, really amazing. Like,
yeah, he's not regular amazing. He's
and I don't
amazing.
think he's jumped from a full approach yet. Like, he's
Nope.
been doing like 5 jumps or 5
Yeah.
steps, 6 step
Yeah,
stuff, man.
five steps. I've seen that. Yeah, he's ridiculous. He's
and
ridiculous.
his coach, I know real well, is really, really good. So I'm like, oh man, like he's got him on a path. Like this kid could, I mean, he's already special as a freshman jumping what he's
Very
jumping.
special.
This,
Very
this
special.
kid could be really special. Like he could be, I hate to say it this way, but he could be a Usain Bolt of the jumps.
Yes.
Honestly, I mean, he might be transformational.
He is transformational of an athlete, man. If you look at his progression so far, and he's only been doing the event for, he said, 3 years. Like,
oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, it's only been 3 years. So it's not that long.
Wow.
Kind of ridiculous if you think about it. I mean, especially jumps, like triple jump, which is very hard on the body. I think they've been doing it the smart way by gradually progressing him, because his season is obviously going to be longer than everybody else's season.
Right.
He's probably going to the world championships and have all these meets. So I think the way they're progressing him is very, very smart. And I mean, the way they're doing it probably wouldn't work for every athlete, because he is just that talented, man. He just need to take 2 or 3 jumps and that's it.
Amazing. It's quite amazing. Well, let's get back to your transformational here. So you go through, did you say biomedical? What was your major? That sounded too smart for me.
Pre-professional biomedical sciences. That's what my degree.
Pre-professional biomedical sciences. Yeah, that's way too many words for an undergrad degree for me. And you got, would you say, an economics as well with that?
Economics minor, yes.
What were you thinking? Like, were you going to own a pre-professional biomedical company?
I don't know, man. I mean, that's the part that, I mean, you could have gone different paths to become a physical therapist. I don't know why I chose that path. Maybe because I was like, man, most athletes don't take this path. They probably take the kinesiology route or whatever, and I want to challenge myself more. But in hindsight, it worked out because I'm a science teacher in high school. You know, I teach chemistry and physics, so it works out at the end of the day. Sometimes you just never know what your direction will be. I mean, that's how life is sometimes.
But as you're going through, you're not thinking of teaching. You're thinking of physical therapy, things like that. But when you graduate, you said you started coaching there at Corpus Christi?
Yes. Yeah, I worked as a physical therapist technician for 2 years first. 2 years as a physical therapist technician. And then I spoke with Sean, and he was like, okay, the position is open. You would like to coach? I'm like, okay, I can handle it. And I mean, I've done all events, and it's not a hard thing to coach. So that's when I really got vamped up into the coaching thing. And obviously, I did my research. I did coaching school. I did all those different things. And that's how I went to, even though I was a thrower, I was hungry for knowledge, you know. That's one thing that will make you a good coach. I was hungry for knowledge. I saw that John Godina had that throws camp thing as well. I was like, okay, even though I'm very versed in throwing, it's good to learn more, you know, outside the box and figure out things. So that's how I eventually met John, and his throwing camp was really amazing. It really eye-opening, you know. So I learned a lot from him as well. But I definitely did my research going back into even Jamaican mentality of how they coach athletes, old school, the Glenn Mills, the Francis, how he coaches his athletes. So I definitely took a look at coaching overall, you know, read up old stuff. I like old school stuff, you know. I like old school stuff. Clyde Hart stuff. I like Michael Johnson. So I researched a lot about Clyde Hart. So that a lot of different backgrounds and principles, and I put it together to my own little thing. So coached there for 2 years, and then the teaching.
Now you were coaching throws there, right?
I was coaching everything there.
Okay. I was thinking throws, and I was like, okay, help me. You might have just unlocked something huge. I was like, how did Clyde Hart's training help you with throws?
I was coaching everything. Sprinters, jumpers, throwers. I was coaching everything from hurdles to sprints.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of coaches then when I was working there. So I literally was working all day long, just
Yeah.
coaching every event, which helped me as well when I came to high school to coach as
Right.
well. So it all works out sometimes.
Right. How was that experience? It's interesting. Coaching is hard, whether
Mhm.
you're coaching just the throwers or just pole vaults, but to coach, and we see this quite often on, I was gonna say the college side, but you mentioned in high school. I love asking a high school coach, "What do you coach?" And he's like, "I'm a high school coach. I coach everything." I get the mentality there, but what you're talking about is, almost from sun up to sundown. You've got the
Yeah,
sprinters at this time,
yeah,
and then the
yeah,
jumpers.
yeah,
You have to,
yes, yes.
position them.
Yeah,
Did,
that's what I do it.
did you like that, or what were some of the challenges for that?
I mean, that was tough,
Yeah.
because sometimes the reason why you have a specialized coach in college is because you need a lot of time with those athletes. So I was literally being spread thin because I had to be coaching sprinters a certain time, jumpers a certain time. My sprinters would be jumpers sometimes, so I had to modify that as well.
Right.
And my throwers needed their time. At that point, I was also designing the strength workout program as well. So we had to put time in for strength workout as well. So it was a lot. I mean, I literally was coaching 8 to 6, like
Right.
a regular job. You know what I mean? I think most coaches don't coach that long. I mean, you probably coach your throwers group for a certain period of hours and then you go do other things. So I did all of that stuff and I was still recruiting. So literally I was working. I don't think a lot of college coaches do that much work, but
Yeah, it's interesting because no coach has ever come to me and said they were afraid of work. So it's not
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But there are so many things that are coming at you. You're talking
yes,
about working 8 to 6, which okay, that's, and again, you're coaching track, so we're outside.
yeah,
No one's
outside,
going to pity
yeah,
us and things like that. But there is paperwork you still have to do. There's
yes,
recruiting, so
yes,
when you're done at 6, you ain't done because now you got to go
yeah,
call kids and coaches
yeah,
and things like that. Oh, and by the way, you're probably making a third of what you should be
yeah,
making monetarily
yeah, yeah,
to do that as
yeah,
well.
yeah. That's a big factor.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah,
There had to be, though, I've experienced those type of situations. There are certainly, though, times of just because when you're in the muck and just, there all the time, some really fun, working with the young people, some fun times together and laughter.
yes, oh yes. Relationships are always been built on those
Yeah.
things. Like you build good relationship. Even though me and a lot of the kids are coaching in college, me and them still cool. Some are teaching high school now, actually. Some of them are teaching, some are doing different things, branching out. But that relationship lasts for a long time. So that's a good thing too.
As you're working through, just really long hours, really hot long hours too, by the way. Any thought you mentioned, physical therapy, thought of going back to that or what?
Actually, I felt content to some extent, but physical therapy was still in the back of my mind. I think that's something that I really enjoyed in the sense of what it does. I really love coaching. I mean, so that's even though I still think about physical therapy sometimes, but I'm like, man, I love coaching high school kids so much more. I
Mhm.
mean, it's interesting. It's interesting now.
So you spent 2 years there.
Yes.
What came next?
Then I went straight into teaching. I went straight into the position at Harlingen. I got that position was available, so I got it. They need a science teacher. So when I first got there, the first thing I did was reach out to the athletic coordinator and say, hey, I could coach track there. I've been interested in coaching track there. And they hooked up the assistant coaching position at the time. So I was assistant, and then by the next year, the person who was coaching kind of left. So the girls' head coach position was open. So I'm like, okay, no problem. I can definitely handle this. So that's how that came along. And I mean, it's
I taught USATF level ones for many, many years. And one of the most common questions that we would get from high school coaches was, how do I become a college coach? And I always say, you don't. That's like you live in this town. you make this amount of money, you're done at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock every night. You don't have a fall. Like, dude, stay where you are. Trust me, you're great. And I think a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of, I think there are college coaches out there that see the high school market, if you will, and say, man, maybe I'd want to do that. How did that position, how did that position come about? And what I mean by that is, you're coaching college, you don't have a teaching degree. How did that, I think there's people out there like, how did you transition? How did that even become?
Transition was I had to get a probationary teaching certification. They have those where you can start off teaching. Actually, I did a PACE program.
Because of your degree, it was like, okay, he may not know how to teach, but he knows the work. Yeah.
So the content knowledge is there.
Content,
so
right.
To teach, you have to have content knowledge and you have to have the pedagogy as well. So you have to do both. So you have to know how to be a teacher, but if you have content knowledge, then okay, you could start off with a probationary certificate and then eventually get your certificate while teaching. So you have a lot of programs now that assist you in getting into the teaching world. So that wasn't really that of a hard transition. Coaching is teaching. So you're always teaching some way or somehow. So
what was that certification? Did you have to go back into classes or what?
I had to go to it's a certification program. It's not every day. It's like on the weekends. I think I went on the weekends for the first 4 or 5 months or something like that. And then you have to take an exam at the end, and that certifies you to be a teacher. You also have to take a content test as well to say you're certified to teach a certain content area. So I did all those, and the content test was pretty quick because that's your knowledge already, so that's a quick one to get. The teaching one, though, requires you to get some hours teaching and go through some different professional development as a teacher. So that's kind of how that works.
Did you have to like shadow another teacher? I mean, you're teaching though at the same time. So
shadowing a teacher, I didn't even have to shadow a teacher until I had a mentor at one point. But you have observational hours. I had a chart of observational hours as well, where I need to get a certain number of observational hours for the year. But I can still teach while getting that.
Is that you observing someone else or someone observing you?
I'm observing somebody else.
Okay, so like during your planning period, you'd go watch the math teacher or something.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So you can kind of see how they're doing things. And that's kind of like on the job training. Like I kind of like that. I feel like a coach. I'm like, hey, you should go watch that coach for an hour and just see how they do things. That's going to help you. Yeah. That's really cool. So what was it like the first time? Sometimes ego can be bad. Ego is not bad. Bad ego is bad. You're coming from a rich track and field tradition in Jamaica. You were a college athlete. You now coached college for 2 years. And now you're looking at a bunch of 14 to 18-year-olds and like, man, I know everything. What are you guys? Just shut up and listen. How was that process of coaching and starting to coach high school kids?
I mean, at first, I'm somebody who likes to observe first to see how things are done. So when I actually first started as an assistant, I really backed off. I didn't really push to do a bunch of stuff. I really was backing off a lot to just see and observe how the process is run, how people approach it, and what the coaches knew. I just want to observe and see what was going on. At the time, my assistant, the head boys coach at the time, Coach Ambrose, he's still the head coach right now. He was like, I would like you to do more. He asked me to do more. So I was like, okay. So eventually he pretty much allowed me to coach both the boys and girls in areas that I see fit. So that helped me being comfortable saying, you know what, okay, it's not like I'm taking over anybody's position, he's allowing me to impart my knowledge onto the team. So that was easy transition because it wasn't the ego thing for them.
Right.
That helped me to started doing more with the groups there. So that definitely helped build the program real fast as well.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point there. I was talking about your eyesight into it, but you're right. The existing coaches could have been like, all right, just stay. We need a throws coach or whatever you started. Stay over there. We've been doing this for years, but instead they had a great posture of like, hey, man, maybe you're the right person for this. I could use help. Could you take these athletes as well? That's actually that shows a lot of maturity and the character of that coach as well. What did you start out? Did you start out kind of in the
I
throw?
started with the throws
Yeah.
as first, and then I'll jump to the relays, and then the group that came in was the Jose Garcia. He won state actually for us. But that group came in as freshmen, and I started working with them early. So I started working with relays and sprints, hurdlers. So I pretty much was bouncing around different areas as well. And then I pretty much transitioned through everybody, working with everybody really. So definitely that helped the team overall because I know everybody got better knowledge, So that helped real fast in developing the athletes. That's how that worked.
This is fascinating to me because a lot of times I shouldn't say again, a lot of times, sometimes I believe it's more common that a high school coach will move on to the college ranks, but I love this college coach who moved to high school ranks. And a few weeks ago, we had Fatima Shabazz, who also did the same thing. She's a longtime coach at Kentucky State University, moves to Vermont, New Hampshire, and starts coaching high school there. What have you seen? I'm curious, the difference in how you coach college kids versus high school kids. And remember, we don't talk X's and O's. I'm not talking about, this drill, that drill, more like philosophy and things like that.
The high school versus college, it's very, very different. In college, obviously, you have more time with the kids. You can do more. So that's a big, big factor. You can do more. Your programming can be much different because now you have, and those kids are just doing track. I mean, college, you're not having your track kid doing football, basketball, volleyball, 3, 4, 5 sports. Your track kid is your track kid. So you have time to really iron out on all the kinks, the strength kinks, the flexibility stuff, all the little intricate things that make you a great athlete. You have time to work on those things. In high school, you have to really modify a lot because even if you have a star athlete, that athlete is going to be doing 3, 4 sports. So how you manage developing the athlete through the years? Most of these kids are not doing one sport, You might be lucky to have 1 or 2 who are doing your sport, but the chances are that's very, very slim. Most of the times, those high school athletes are doing multi-sports. So you have to figure out how to modify the plan for them. Overworking a kid is easy, even though they're young, they feel like they're invincible. You have to modify, how do I get these kids not to be overworked, and that's the biggest thing, really. I think that's the biggest factor. You have to figure out how to make a plan that works for the kids you have. The kids who are coming from football, the transition is a little bit easier. You have guys who are doing this football, they go straight into track. That might be a little easier, but you also have athletes who are doing soccer. Soccer and track season pretty much intertwined. So that's kind of very difficult to have an athlete who is probably a star soccer player and a star soccer track athlete for you. How do you get them enough where when they get to you, they are conditioned in track? Because obviously soccer conditioning and track conditioning, 2 different conditioning, So there's so much that goes into it at the high school level. I think high school coaches actually most of the time can be better than college coaches because you have so much you have to consider. You're not sitting down every day just doing one thing. You have to consider different elements you're working with,
Yeah, I have a separate question, but I want to stay on that real quick because there's a lot of college coaches listening right now that said, excuse me, I want you to defend yourself. Tell me more about why you said the high school coach might be. I'll give you the credit. You did say might be.
Right. I mean, it's a lot of factors that goes into it. Some of the key factors are this. A high school coach, you literally has to develop your athlete. Like you have to develop the athlete. If you get an athlete going to most D1 schools now, literally the coaching takes care of itself because most big time D1 schools, they're only getting athletes running amazing times. I mean, literally you have to get a kid coming in. All you have to keep them healthy, make 1 or 2 adjustments, and they should be good. Like, that's the level that it's at right now. I see guys going into college, they're running 20 point low or 10.1. I mean, those are amazing times going into college. Like, literally you're going to college already as a big star already. I mean, you might, and I just said it a while ago, most high school athletes do not do one event or do one sport. So if I have an athlete who's doing multi-sport and they're still running those stellar times, if I get them for a full track season and they're not doing anything but track, they should improve. You know what I mean? Like even without any high-tech training or high-tech anything, if I get them for a full year, just track conditioning, work on them staying healthy, their body's still not fully developed. Some of them still weak as hell because they have not lifted much. You know what I mean? Give them some strength training, you have a good sprinting program or whatever program you have, those athletes should improve. So when I say sometimes, yeah, you might have a lot of high school coaches who are actually better than college coaches, is because a high school coach, we can get a kid and develop a kid into that big sprinter. If that same coach could have an athlete coming in at those times with a whole year of just track, I would figure that that coach could do some spectacular thing with the athlete. So that's kind of the premise I'm saying that.
I certainly think if we were, if there's, I don't know, I'm gonna make up a number, 10,000 track coaches in America, college, high school, et cetera, and we were gonna rank them number 1 through 10,000, who's best. Now, there's a lot of criteria for best, so we'll just say general on this. I don't think that the number 1 through 7,000 would all be college coaches, and then 7,001 would go down to, I agree with you that there are certainly some high school coaches. When I say some, that could be a huge number, by the way, would be interspersed in there for sure. I would be, I'm kind of a betting man. I would bet that if you were to list the top 100 coaches, I would be shocked if at least one wasn't a high school coach in there.
I would bet more than that.
Yeah, at least.
I would say at least 30% would be high school.
Yeah, maybe. You know that
30-40%.
Right. Yeah.
30-40% would be high school coaches.
That's right.
Not saying that there's not excellent college coaches, guys.
Correct. No, that's exactly
right. Excellent college coaches.
That's exactly right.
And the funny thing is, some of these excellent college coaches used to be high school coaches. I
know, right?
Yes. Yes.
Here's the crazy thing. I've said this before, and I really learned it actually as being the host here of this podcast with 200 plus coaches. There's this myth that a high school coach cannot become a college coach. Like if there's a college coaching position open, just throw all the high school resumes out. I'm going to, they just can't, they don't understand recruiting and whatever, blah, 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 right? They don't understand that you got to coach from Labor Day through June instead of just 3 or 4 months or whatever. And yet some of the top coaches that I have interviewed, and I'm including Mouse Holloway, I'm including Chris Johnson at Arkansas, now the one's head coach, started as a high school coach. Yeah. So wait a minute. High school.
We just said that 100. I would probably say in that 100 would have 90% who have actually done both.
Right.
I would say that. Right.
Yeah. And so it just boggles me. It's like on one hand, we say they can't coach college and said, well, I can show you a whole bunch who are awesome who started out on the high school level. So that's not copacetic. They don't jive. I don't figure it out.
Now, which I think we touched on the point with that as well, because as I mentioned before, in high school, you have to develop an athlete. Like you don't get them when they're just spectacular. Like you have to do some work. Yes, you might have 1 or 2 athletes who are just out of this world, but in high school, you have to spend some time developing an athlete, man. Like to get them in a higher end to run a certain way running isn't not just getting up and running. Some of these athletes, you have to teach them how to run. You have to teach them how to draw the blocks, how to drive, all these things. So if that coach who have developed guys over the past couple of years, that's a lot of research to use. So when they go to the college level, they have all this background work that makes them excellent coaches now, and I know quite a few excellent coaches in college, and I know for sure they used to coach high school,
And I'm on a crusade to stop judgment amongst coaches. And something you said there kind of really drove it home for me. First of all, you talked about, on the high school side, typically, depending on what state you are and things like that, you've got 3 months to work with these kids. They're typically doing football, basketball, baseball, soccer. Oh, and by the way, we all, air quotes, encourage athletes to do more than one sport, especially in high school. You're right. When you get to college, a little less, way less number of people, right? Less people are doing volleyball and track and even football and track, et cetera. But in high school, I think a vast majority of college coaches would say, oh, I would encourage a track kid to play basketball, soccer, football, whatever, right? But then on the other hand, so we'll say that. And then on the other hand, we'll say, gosh, that coach down in Harlingen really didn't get that hurdler up to speed where I need them. Like, why didn't they spend time on this and that or that? And it's like, wait a minute. First of all, you wanted to be that kid also played basketball, which means I only had 2 months to have them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like this judgment of like I want to abolish that judgment and be like, hey, that coach did as good of a job as they could. Are they coming to you underdeveloped? Maybe. Okay, wait. I'll say it this way. Is that kid coming to you underdeveloped? Absolutely. Compared to the kid who does do track, who has a private trainer or whatever from September through June, has a club coach, whatever. Yes, certainly that kid who's doing track all year will come to you more developed than that kid who played basketball and football and then 2 months or 2.5 months of track. Certainly. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that coach is bad. Doesn't mean that coach did a bad job. That coach had too much. Some of the coaches that I respect more than anybody are coaches up in like Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a 3-month season. The first month is under snow, by the way. And then the second month, they actually get to do some training. And then the last month is all their conference, sectionals, regional, state. They have no time to develop a kid. And yet, some really stinking good kids.
But the thing you said a while ago that also touch on something that I also think that it's been missing now because the dynamic in college coaching is becoming so business-like now. It's becoming really business-like that I think a lot of coaches, when they recruit, are not recruiting on the basis of potential anymore. I think it's almost like you need to come in ready to score NCAA championships already. I'm like,
you know who I blame? You know who I blame for that?
Who?
You. Here's why. You mentioned it. You said kids are coming out of high school running 20 points and 10 ones.
Okay, I see what you're saying though.
And so that amalgamation of kids are going to college, meaning to make it to the 100-meter finals or even the mile final of NCAA. No division. I don't care. Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. It's nuts. So Division 3, I think the kid ran 10:16 to win. Division 3, that kid is on 0 athletic scholarship, and yet I guarantee you I can name 50 Division 1 schools that would full ride that kid. Division 3, 10:16. A hurdler in Division 2 runs 13 flat. So, and that has to there has to be a base for that. Those kids didn't get that good just because they went to college. They already were good or not good. It's the high school coach's fault. You guys collectively are doing a much better job of producing much better athletes. And I do think there is some, now the world continues to get more flat because of social media and things like that, and cell phones being in everybody's hands. We're able to communicate with the rest of the world to get those recruits in here as well. So I have a lot of empathy for, the 10 or so programs on Division 1 that have a shot at winning the national title. There's about 10, there's another 20 that think they can't. There's 10. And so they get so little scholarship money. What is it, 11.6 or 12.6?
Yeah, they're on there.
Yeah, and 18 on the women's side.
Yes.
To get a whole team, hammer throwers, relay. So they've got to, and by the way, and they're all recruiting the same kid. Those 10 programs, they're recruiting the same kids. So they've got to figure out, how do I get that kid to this school or this school over here? And money is certainly a factor. It may not be the only factor, but it's certainly a factor. And every time you give a kid $1 extra, well, that's a very small pool that's coming out of. That means I got to get a 10-20 kid to walk on, or a 13-7 hurdler to walk on. And so as far as development, another part that does it is these super conferences. So when I was at Mississippi State, there were 12 teams in the SEC. So we could get using the 100 as an example, we could probably get a 1050, 1055 kid on a 25%-ish, roughly scholarship, and develop them down to a 1020, 1010 kid and make the finals one day. Then they added Texas A&M and Mizzou. And now they're adding Oklahoma and Texas. What does a 1050 kid do in that conference? A 1050 kid doesn't make the 4x1 team in that conference. Now, here's where I really think it's interesting. When you say you blanketed, we're going to be a little bit more specific, that college coaches don't want to develop. First of all, and I will also take that a little bit off the table, when Mouse Holloway gets a 10-20 kid out of high school, he's got to develop them to a 10 flat kid and better just to make the final. So he's developing. But I think we like to blame the kids and say that the kids have a D1 or bust mentality. I think in our society we have that. So I think in general, high school coaches have that a little bit, and there's a little bit of ego of, well, I sent my kid to in your case in Texas. I sent my kid to A&M. I sent my kid to Texas, Texas Tech, Baylor, versus, hey, I sent my kid to LeTourneau University. That's a great school. They're going to get great coaching there, but no one goes, wow, hey, he sent someone to LeTourneau.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
that bias is, I think, across the board for even the 100%. Kids themselves. Yeah,
100%. No,
themselves.
Absolutely. You know, there's no one thing is not one thing. There's no one thing is the one thing, meaning it's not just, oh, college coaches don't want to develop. That insults college coaches. And it also insults to say, oh, high school coaches are just ego. They only want to send their kids to Texas. That's not true either. You high school coaches really want what's best for the kids. And I guarantee you, I just know it in my heart. If a kid came to you and said, hey, I might go to LeTourneau, or I may go and walk on at Texas Tech. And you'd say, okay, well, what's best for you? And you say, well, you know, LeTourneau's closer to home, and it's going to cost me way less. Hey, bud, maybe that's the school you should go to. Your ego would not say, hey, you know what? Screw this kid. Let him get a bunch of student loan debt. Go to Texas Tech, where he's never going to make a travel squad. You would do the right thing. I know you would. I know you would.
Sometimes, man, and sometimes I guess the business side of it, some of these coaches literally they're coaching for their jobs as well. So they need at least to come in almost ready to go, you know. So it's almost like, it's not like I don't want to coach. I think I had this conversation with with a coach recently as well. And he said that they're cutting the amount of scholarship he has. He's like, it's not like I'm not interested in these kids. Like, I want them, but my hands are tied. They're literally cutting the amount of scholarships I have. And because of that, that means if I'm recruiting, the kid that I would have recruited would get a small scholarship at 10-5, 10-4. No, I can't give him a scholarship. I have to get that kid who is a 10-1, 10-2 and invest in him more than the 10-5 kid. It's not, I don't want that 10-5 kid who has some potential, but it's just that the way the system is set up now, coaches' hands are being tied. So definitely I can backtrack on that a little bit. I mean, it's not that they don't want to coach the kids. It's just that the system is definitely changing a lot, you know?
And here's the other thing. 99.99% of all these kids are not going to go pro in track and field. Okay. So if we can agree on that, because you know, I get, you know, again, I live my life on Twitter, as you know, I get the like, all these kids want full rides. You dang right. I think they all should get full rides.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, I hate student loan debt. I hate debt that hangs over you. I hate debt that you're gonna spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a student loan, and you're gonna make 35 grand out of high school or out of college. It's gonna take you forever. It's gonna handicap you on owning a house and a marriage and families and vacations and stuff like that. So to me, I think every kid. Now that means they're not gonna go to Arkansas, Florida, et cetera, on a full ride. But if Stephen F. Austin or Arkansas Baptist or whomever is going to offer you a full ride, if it has your major and it's the right, situation for your family, go.
And one of the things I told kids is that, for example, myself as an example, when I came in, and I came in not knowing, because when I came to A&M Corpus Christi, I was thinking it's the big A&M. I thought it was College Station. I'm like,
oops.
I didn't know much about anything, really. I didn't know much. I mean, here A&M A&M. I'm like, okay, A&M.
Yeah. I saw them on TV.
So what happened is that I tell people that, okay, I went to A&M Corpus Christi, but I went to NCAA championships 3 years in a row. I went to my freshman year, I went to regionals, and then after that, every year I went to nationals. I was an American athlete. I still competed against all the D1 schools. It doesn't matter. A D1 is a D1. It might be a small D1 school, but you still compete against Texas, UT. I mean, everybody. NM, the UCLAs. You're still competing against everybody. So if you can be developed and get to the point where you can be competitive against these guys, why not go to a small school on a full ride?
100%. And to the point of, I say it's your fault, the high school coach, of how the base has gotten so much better. Guess what? In college, there are excellent coaches at quote unquote mid-major Division I's and again, go look at if you're, we have several athletes that watch the show and listen to the show as well. If you think can only get coached in Division I or just Power 5, go right now and go look up the results of the Division II national meet. Go look at the Division III NAIA. Heck, junior college. I'm a product of a junior college coaching. It is. I would be hard pressed to believe that you would go in and be an All-American right off the bat at any of those places.
Mm-hmm.
You might. I hope so. Hope you're that great. But it is. If you are a national champion, if you're an All-American in any one of these divisions, you are really stinking good. You are good. That means you are getting good coaching.
Yes.
And if you can get your education to be paid for at the same time,
that's all about.
God bless. That is the way to do it. I love these type of conversations because we get heated. I love it, but it's so important to have. Yeah. And sometimes we only have them through anonymity on social media, or we only have it with our buddies, or we say one thing to a coach, but we say a little different behind their back.
There's so many different things that's going on that I think sometimes even the clash between a college and a high school coach's mindset and a club coach's mindset, because sometimes the club, that's another aspect of it,
100%.
Some kids
especially
have
in Texas.
club coaching, in Texas as well. Some kids have club coaching, and it's the dynamics of it is big. So you have to understand that a lot of factors are going on.
Yeah,
and it's not like we're pinning one coach against another coach or whatever. It's just the system you're working in sometimes dictates what you have to do. So
we have to drop our ego. I'm going to tell a bad story, and I think this is a common story. There was a young lady who was being offered a good-sized scholarship at a Division II school, a really good Division II school too, by the way. Like, you'd see them at nationals as a team all the time, right? And this club coach said, "No, hold off. You'll get an offer from Division I." And this person was not a Division I athlete. And by the time this person found out that they were not, they weren't getting any offers, the Division II offer had been gone.
Yep.
And now I think this person ended up going to junior college, which is great, nothing wrong with that, but didn't get the experience that they may have deserved because
that happens quite often too.
No, and it's straight ego. It's all ego. It's that I sent my kid to Division I versus I sent my kid to Division II. You get props for both of those in my mind, but sometimes we care about what's on our jersey. What we're getting. Okay, we're going to wrap up with this because I want to continue this conversation because I think this is a lot of value for those who choose to listen right now. Because you come from Jamaica and you were recruited out of Jamaica, I'm interested. I'm curious. I never did much international. I did actually help recruit and sign one really good Jamaican athlete. It would have been around your time frame. Do you remember Steve Mullins?
Oh yeah, I know Steve Mullins. Steve Mullins was my senior, I guess, because he was class 1 when I was class 2.
Yeah, and he would have been probably just a little older.
Yeah. That time he was the fastest in Jamaica. That time he was like,
I got to work with Steve at Mississippi State, and still one of the highlights. I really like Steve. I never got his brother Dwight ran for Mississippi State after I left. I didn't get to know him, but Steve, man,
he was nice.
Steve taught me a lot as a coach, with someone at that level, it's like, we need to do these things. I really love Steve, but I'm curious. You mentioned relationships, recruiting into Jamaica. Is the culture of recruiting in Jamaica, do you, I'm going to say this kind of in a crude way. Do you have to have a guy? Do you have to know the coach at St. Jago or or can a guy who just has never coached, who never recruited Jamaica, just show up one day or just call one day to get Jamaican athletes?
You mean, yes. I think Jamaicans are very open to the recruiting process. I don't think we're so cut off with where you're sending a kid. I think the opportunity is something that we see. I mean, and international kids see that a lot, that you're getting education paid for. That is number one. The other, not everybody's going to, I mentioned already, not everyone will be a professional athlete. We see the value in education. And we know that, okay, if a kid is coming over here for school, most of the time it's for education purposes. I mean, yes, the biggest star athletes obviously are thinking of going pro already. I mean, that's just the level we're at now, where you seen a few of the Jamaican high school stars turn pro.
Yeah, we just had a young lady the other day, right? Yeah.
Yes. So they're turning pros early. So
Mm-hmm.
if you can turn pro, you know that there's a business aspect for you, then okay, that's where you want to go. But I think the mindset for coaches and parents and the kids back home is that, okay, I can get my education paid for, which is very, very big, because it means Jamaica is a rich country, and we see the value in education. So I think most coaches are very open to it. If a coach was to call any coach in Jamaica or get in contact with a coach in Jamaica and they have a kid that, might not be a, same thing you just said, might not be a UT kid or
right.
Division 1 kid, and they can provide a scholarship for him to go to D2 schools or whatever.
Yeah.
I think some of that the coach would be open-minded to immediately. And it's not an equal thing where, like in America, I think it's more on your chest to say, oh, I sent a kid to Texas Tech or A&M. Back home, I don't think that label in the chest exists, because it's just, okay, he went to America for college. That's big enough.
That's big, yeah.
That's big enough,
And to your point about what we talked about earlier in the conversation about how you grew up in Jamaica too, in Jamaica, we don't have football and baseball in professional, so we don't grow up. We may grow up in Jamaica still a Bears fan or something like that, but it's not like here where my dad was a Bears fan and that culture, and you don't maybe have a lot of. Do we have American football in Jamaica, like in the high school side? No.
We watch it. I think kids the world is becoming more global. Again, everybody sees everything in their phone. So I think the sport, football itself, has grown. American football has grown. Soccer is our number one football.
But are there teams at the high school level in Jamaica for football?
No. Soccer.
Yeah. But there's not a American football team.
No.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah.
We have soccer is the closest thing. Soccer is a big thing. Soccer and cricket is the two big things.
Cricket, yes, that's right.
Soccer and cricket. Apart from that, track would probably be the next big thing. We don't have that many sports we're competing against with each other. So,
do you think track's third?
Right now, I think track's probably in the middle between cricket and soccer. Probably number one. I think soccer is one of the biggest sports in Jamaica. Soccer has always been big. Cricket is also big too, but that's probably three. Soccer, track might be number two.
Wow.
Or it might be a battle of 1-2, soccer or track.
In America, like, we're 10th, so we'll take a tie or a fight for second. We're football, baseball, basketball, someplace lacrosse.
It's so much. It's so much. Hockey, even hockey probably.
Someplace, absolutely, man. Some places hockey is number one. That's right. Exactly. Not in Texas, though.
No, not in Texas.
Hickel, man, thank you so much. Again, you're kind of two parts of this conversation today. Your journey is so fascinating. It's interesting to me. We had Brooke Rasnick on the podcast about a month ago, and she mentioned where she grew up and where she went to college was 30 minutes away. And when she went to college, she was homesick. and I can appreciate that. Now, when we talk to individuals like you, who's, you can't drive to your college.
I can't drive.
And maybe cost.
That was an experience. And that was an experience within itself,
First time you flew?
That was my first time here. I actually went to pen release. I came to pen release in high school.
Sure.
That was my second time coming to America, and the first time staying in America like that. But again, in Corpus Christi is way down there as well. There's nobody. Literally, I have no family, no friends.
Yeah.
The dynamics of the campus was not very. The black population wasn't a lot.
Sure.
It's grown over the years, and most of the black kids were athletes. So again, it's the dynamics coming to a country, knowing nobody, no family members, crazy. So obviously that means it was a welcoming environment, though. So that means
but I can respect that. It's different. Different. People look differently. People are eating differently.
Everything.
And there's no homeboy. There's at home you've got a mom or a brother or a best friend. You go there and it's like everybody's a stranger. I got to figure out who is going to be, in the circle, but that ain't just an automatic. So I can appreciate that, man. I really can. To me, that's really honestly That's super brave, honestly, because we're also talking about this as a 17, 18-year-old kid, by the way, not as a 30-year-old adult.
Yeah.
You're still forming, who you are, and your brain's still growing. So I can really appreciate that. And for those
And
who
I have kids
like
now who don't want to go. Same thing. I have kids here at school who are like, I'm not gonna move 2 hours away from home. And I'm like,
uh-huh,
what, man?
uh-huh, yeah,
It's different. I mean, and we talk about and the mindset, that's also a hindering mindset a lot of kids have.
100%.
Some kids get full scholarships and will not leave. Will
Yeah.
not leave. So
It's amazing how small the world is becoming, and yet it can still
yeah.
be 2 hours can be, a lifetime away. Well, thank you so much for your journey, and thank you for really a fun, I think a lot of value conversation in recruiting, man. Again, you've got it, you see it from both sides. You've been in the college side where you've recruited, you've been recruited. Now you're in the high school side where you're seeing kids and helping kids get recruited and in all different levels. And so I think there's a lot of value. There's still a lot of, it's weird. There's still a lot of mystery around recruiting. I think because it's not regimented. It's not like, oh, if you run this time, you get this much. It's very subjective, I think is the right word.
Yes. I told Miley recently about it as well, that no, it's really needs based. Like, I mean, you have a coach who might need a thrower, his field events is low, you have enough sprinters. You might be a great sprinter, but they just don't have the money for you right now. You know what I mean? Like it's very
that's the other part to it. That's exactly right.
Yeah. It's very tricky. It's very tricky.
A school says, you know what, we don't have facilities for throws, so we're not gonna have any throws. It's like, man, I could be so good for them. It's like,
yes,
not the place for you. It's just not. It doesn't have anything to do with you, kid. That doesn't pull you down. It's just, this is not the right place. Well, thank you so much, man. This was a lot of fun. I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful. You stepped up at the last second to help us out here in the podcast.
Actually, appearing, she sent me your Twitter thing. She follows you a lot. Tiffany Newby. She follows you. Yeah, she follows a lot of sports world, and she's like, you should jump on that podcast. I'm like, all right, cool, no problem.
Well, shout out to her. She's awesome. And thank you, because we just had a great conversation because of you, Tiffany. And I think people are better for it. So really do appreciate it. Thank you guys for following me on Twitter. I have a lot of fun there. Hopefully bringing you guys a lot of value there. So thank you for being on the show this week, man. I'm really grateful for you.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for being here listening. Again, we're going to have a lot of fun with this. We're going to explore journeys from high school coaches, college coaches, and everything in between. And I think, we continue to work to bring value for you, the listeners, whether it's recruiting, captainship, the work of being a coach and how you time management. We're going to continue exploring those conversations. And sometimes it's going to get a little heated. That's okay. Because having those conversations and being open and honest and authentic and still walking away as good friends, I think that's what brings a lot of value. So thanks for being here this week. Join us next week. We'll do it all over again right here on the Gill Track and Field Connections podcast. Have a good week, everybody.